This is the oh god damn it! It's too early in the morning for this shit. Hello, viewers. Hello, everybody watching live. Of course, this is the Hardy Complex. It is the morning of Monday, October 15th, 2018. This is the Hardy Complex, the one place for everything and anything you don't want to see or hear. I am Zach Hardy. Welcome to the show. We are apologizing for missing last week. We planned on taking a vacation for the Monday and then uploading on the Tuesday or Wednesday following, but we were never able to kind of get the schedule suited around, and that was bad. But nevertheless, I complained 2 weeks ago on our last episode of the podcast that there was nothing to talk about. The schedule for the NFL was, blank. And aside from one, I think, hot button issue at the time, there was not much to talk about. But I guess there is a litany of shit to line up today in this episode. So, this title, of course, is the Hardy Complex 9, but you might as well call it the rant because there's going to be a shit ton. And for the next 30 minutes, expect me to rant about the WWE. In short, the WWE needs to die. Let me just read something really quickly. From the Figure 4, Wrestling Observer Figure 4 online. That is, I'm reading off of f4wonline.com. This is the position on a hot button issue in the WWE and including the world. And now that John Oliver talked about it a little bit last night, I feel like it's okay to hop on the bandwagon. Note they have updated the article saying that the WWE has noted that Crown Jewel should be listed on their schedule, but the original states the Crown Jewel event on November 2nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia has been removed from the WWE's website calendar of events. At this point, WWE has not made a statement related to the show, but it was known dating back a few days that backup ideas were being talked about in the event such a decision was forced. The event page for Crown Jewel is still up on WWE.com, though references to Saudi Arabia have been removed. There are a number of huge ramifications of the show not taking place, if that even is the case, as perhaps it was just removed until a final decision is made. They were likely to have tomorrow as a soft deadline, as they would either be promoting the show hard on television Monday or having to go with whatever new plan was in place. The Daily Beast has mentioned an idea of doing a third show in Manchester, England on November 4th, since they already are taping shows on November 5th and November 6th, and the arena does not have a date on the Sunday. It would give the United Kingdom its first worldwide airing pay-per-view since 1992. But there are many key questions regarding both the show and the future of the deal with Saudi Arabia. There's much more on the article. You can go ahead and read it at www.f4wonline.com/WWE-news /update-WWE-crown jewel crown jewel still scheduled 267876. So with that, there is obviously huge news with the WWE in Saudi Arabia, as you can muster. The pay-per-view is in jeopardy, and the reason for why was not stated, but there is I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, but there was a Turkish media reporter, who visited Saudi Arabia or had to pick up papers and was not seen again. He was essentially kidnapped. He has not been heard from in 12 or 13 days now, and the wide speculation is that, or the overwhelming blame is pointed at the Saudi Arabian government for his kidnap and most likely subsequent murder. The Saudi Arabian government has declined or has declined responsibility for it, stating that it is false representation of them and of the situation, but when it comes down to it, it's not a good deal to begin with. Now, the reason why I say that the WWE needs to die is because the heavy circumstances that the WWE will continue forth with this pay-per-view. If you've been watching this podcast and my content and just listening to me talk for years now, I do not like WWE. I hate the WWE. I do not watch its weekly programming any longer. I read about what's happening, but I do not give them the benefit of my time. I do not watch their special shows. I did not watch a Super Showdown. I was not planning on watching Crown Jewel to begin with. Though if it does happen, I'll tune in to see if it was even worth the issue to begin with. Um, and yeah, so that's that. So that's my take on it, or that's my take on the company. The reason why I think it needs to die is because this is the most pathetic thing I think WWE has been involved with since the Chris Benoit double murder suicide. Um, for one, this is probably the biggest um, hot button issue involving WWE in an overwhelming aspect, not that transcends the pro wrestling industry since Chris Benoit's death and the whole situation regarding him 11 years and more ago. I do not like WWE's business practices. I made this very clear, but this is probably the most pathetic stand that they have taken in a long time. I get that there's been a deal made, but being as this transcends professional wrestling and transcends the industry as a whole into a whole new realm of now foreign affairs that the government is involved with, um, you can easily go back on that whole arrangement with the 2030 project. For one, when the WWE had their greatest Royal Rumble event, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the correct words, so you may hear me pause, but when the WWE had their greatest Royal Rumble event back in April or May, whatever month it was, there was a heavy broadcast of propaganda, of how great Jeddah, Saudi Arabia was. They praised the Saudi Arabian government, as did John Cena. He gave a thanks to the Saudi Arabian government during the broadcast, which I can only imagine he did not feel 100% comfortable in doing so. Um, Now, this is a bad thing because of the fact that it was not done out of good intentions, much like everything the WWE does. Now, this transcends pushing Roman Reigns or the call for their programming to be halted. This is now horrible malpractice of business um, efforts. They struck up a multi-billion-dollar deal with Fox for their SmackDown program alone. So they have absolutely no reason to go to Saudi Arabia for money other than greed. They're not struggling for money. They're not hungry for money. Sadly, they should be. They put on horrible programming to begin with, so they should not be looked at with such esteem. Nevertheless, I digress with that issue because the overwhelming issue is why they went to Saudi Arabia, and that was for the money that they do not need. They were chasing greedy money. And on top of that, they were making it seem as though they were just in doing so. They slated the Evolution pay-per-view, obviously the all-women pay-per-view, to take place the week before the Saudi Arabian pay-per-view to kind of delve down the concern that there were no women involved with the Saudi Arabia pay-per-view, which to me is just pathetic. I hate it. I You don't need to do that out there. Thank you. Nevertheless, I say that way too often. The Evolution pay-per-view was scheduled in the time slot that it was to ensure that there was less aggravation for the women not being involved in the Saudi Arabia pay-per-view. Obviously, there's the understandable reason as to why it may be. Doesn't mean it's understandable, but you understand why that's the case. You have a grip as to why they're not on the show. Which I just find as the worst attempt at trying to cover up something that is just another reason for why it's unjust. It's kind of like the WWE saying, hey, there's this Evolution pay-per-view, and then there's this Saudi Arabia pay-per-view. You're going to watch both because you suck our dick. So, you can watch the Evolution pay-per-view, you can have your little fanboy moment. You can wish to stick your hard cock in Alexa Bliss's ass and fuck her into the gravel, all you fucking want. But once that's over with, Put that idea on the back burner, and then watch this really, really, really shitty upgraded house show version of a pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia with a bunch of stars that are not only going to be booked absolutely horribly, but it's not going to be worth the watch, and it's not going to be worth the effort that we put into it. But because they're paying us a shit ton of money, we're going to put on the show anyway, despite the fact that there's a man's murder on their hands. And now, as I said before, they were chasing greedy money. It's now transcended that. Just like the situation has transcended the pro wrestling industry, it's now transcended greedy money. Because now they're not dealing with greedy money. They're dealing with money from a country that has most likely kidnapped and slaughtered an individual because they did not like their views. They're dealing with a country that they praise so highly and so heavily, despite the fact that it's so unwilling to change. And it's common, nature. I've said for years that people that own guns are not very against giving up their guns because of some other agenda, some higher agenda that they want to fulfill on their own. It's not for some racist reason. It's not for a violent reason. It's that the people that own guns, especially the people that are being heavily targeted, like the people that feel like in Texas, that feel like they're being targeted with these laws. It's not that they want to keep their guns for some ulterior motive. It's that they want to keep their guns because they grew up with guns. They grew up being taught how to use guns, the proper way to use guns, the proper way to handle guns, the reasons and cases in which to use guns in. They were born with it. They were raised with it. It's kind of hard to let things go when you're raised with something. A lot of people look at elders and, there was this one video where a woman was trying to explain how she had a friend and she named him, or she called him African American, and her grandpa went, so a nigger. And then she goes, yeah, he's African American. And then the grandpa goes, a nigger. And people look at that people look at that in such a horrible light. Like, how could this old man say that? It's not a good thing. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is he was raised in an era in which black people were not looked at in the way that they are now. They were not looked at as equal like they are now. And it's not that he hates black people, because on the inside, I think if he were taught something younger, he would have if he was taught this view when he was younger, he would have that case or that same view now. But he was raised in an era that's different from ours, so he's still in that era because that's what he grew up in. The same way that people with guns grew up in an era with guns, and we can't expect them to just give them up outright because they were raised with it. And with the Saudi Arabian government, they were raised, it's a very royal family, they were raised with a lot of wealth. They were raised with a lot of power. They were raised with power. And they crave that power. And without that power, they don't have the accessibility that they've had since they were children. They were raised thinking, all right, women shouldn't drive. Women are just an accessory to men. Women aren't good for anything. Human rights are bad. We should get what we want. Money is the solution to everything. Everybody worships us because we have oil. But if all of that goes out, that's what they were raised with. If all that goes out, they have nothing, right? So I'm not gonna. So I stand that way with people that don't want to give up guns because they were raised with it. So I understand why the Saudi Arabian government has the stances that they do. But the WWE is praising them to the highest extent as this great nation with a great government so willing to change. They're not willing to change. You put up during your broadcast, during their prayer time, you put up during your broadcast a promotional or a promotional or commercial figure for an upcoming show with your mixed match challenge that involved your female talent. And the Saudi Arabian government lambasted you, or Saudi Arabia lambasted you, and you apologized for it. You apologized for putting on. Think about it in the overall aspect. Think of it if you were to strip it down to its bare minimum. You apologized to a government because you put on a commercial with women. You didn't take a stance like, all right, we didn't have women in your country, we didn't have women on the show. We had to put out a commercial for our show, our programming. We had to do that, and this was the commercial we had. So sorry if you don't agree with it, but you got your way for the majority of the thing. Hell, you wanted individuals that were fucking dead, and we got you whatever we could closest to it. We got a sumo wrestler that nobody knew of, and we still hyped him up as something that was huge. He's a nobody, but we still tried to make people care about him for you. They're not gonna do that. They're not going to do that because the Saudi Arabian government pays them a shit ton of money. A shit ton of money that is, in all purposes, in all aspects, something that the WWE has asked for and wished for out of greed. They want it out of greed. They don't need it. They have Fox. They have billions of dollars. They have a shit ton of money, and that they don't deserve to begin with because they don't put on the product and they don't use the practices in business to earn that money. They are taking that money openly. They crave that money. It's greedy. It's out of greed. And now, while I don't think they should be in this or deserve to be in this situation where they have to answer to this position of we're supposed to hold a show in a country with a government that just killed somebody because they don't like us or because they didn't like them, they shouldn't be put in a position in which they have to make a decision. Granted, the decision is fucking logical. It's obvious. Don't fucking hold the show. But the WWE is not going to do that because they go for the greedy money. And I've been saying greedy money this entire this entire segment for a reason. I know I've said it ad nauseum. I get it. I've said it quite a lot. But I say greedy money because it started out that the WWE was going to Saudi Arabia for money out of greed. Greedy money. This conversation has changed now. There's a position where they're going to hold a show for the money in a country that killed an individual that didn't agree with them. Here's why I've said greedy money. It adds emphasis because they are no longer dealing with greedy money. They are dealing with blood money. And that's a very, very different thing, especially when you put it into perspective. And when it comes down to WWE, here's what kind of company they are. They see that money, and I hope that they are paid with stacks of money with the goddamn journalists' own drops of blood on it. Because the WWE will show themselves as what they are. They will take that money with that man's blood-stained... They will take that man's blood-stained money. And they will see it not as a reason as to why they need to rethink their business model, but they will just see it as a reason to stop at the bank on the way home. And that's sickening and appalling. If USW did that, or made that decision, not only would I refuse to get on a plane to go to that show, not only would I outright refuse to take part in that show, but I would most likely immediately take a hiatus from USW as a whole. That's appalling. I can't imagine that being a logical decision you step to without having some motive to benefit you. And the WWE needs to die now, because this is how it's been. And the only reason we're focusing on it so much is because now it's a hot button issue. Because now the U.S. Senate and U.S. Senate and Congress are involved in this. Now the U.S. Congress and Senate are branching for them to stop. John Oliver fucking called them out last night, and it made headlines. It's telling right there. And the fucking tragic thing is that they're going to continue rolling on. New Japan, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling aren't big enough to gain stature for people to go, hey, want to watch wrestling? Ooh, wait, what's this show? Let's see, Impact Wrestling. All right, sure, we'll watch this. You know, WWE is always going to be synonymous with wrestling until they're dead, and that needs to happen now. Because I held off on the position that they had the whole propaganda bullshit. They apologized for shit that they should not have been apologizing for. But now it's an issue. Because they're doing it knowing the repercussions, and they don't care about the repercussions. And this company needs to die. Because there's an old adage in business that states companies will thrive until someone better and another company better can do it better. And then that company that did it before dies. WWE killed out the territory system because WWE did it better. and the territory system died. WCW came along, and WCW did it better for a little bit until they began to kind of retrace their steps. And then WWE gave the better product and did it better, and WCW died. Eventually, you're going to get to a point, let's just imagine that the next three promotions I state are eras in which WWE has to compete. Eventually, Impact Wrestling will be doing things better than the WWE does. WWE has to improve and evolve and adapt to beat out Impact, and then beat out Ring of Honor when they come along, and then New Japan when they come along, then All Japan when they come along, then USW when they come along, then Progress when they come along. You see what I'm saying? There will always be a company that will come up and do what you do better than you do. And you have to sink or swim. Most oftentimes you sink, because that company does it better than you for a reason, and you die as a reason. Just like natural selection with human life, natural selection in business. You live long enough until somebody does what you do better than you do. Then you die. And with the WWE, it's been a long time coming. It sickens me. It appalls me. The WWE knows what they're doing. You know damn well they're not doing it out of kindness. They're not doing it out of support and out of hope that the Saudi Arabian government will improve. They're doing it for the money. Money is a powerful thing. It's like a drug. It's like confidence. Once you have it, you're not yourself. You're whomever the money or the confidence or the drug makes you into. Then when you come down from your high, you're back to who you were. Kind of, sort of. But I'll tell you this much. I don't care how much money you're being given. You do not go through with this show. And if you do go through with this show, somebody needs to take your everything, the WWE empire, out immediately. This is sickening. Finn Balor had a ring gear set up that was it was very colorful, rainbow. That's what I'm looking for. It had the gear was made up or comprised out of bands with colors of the rainbow on it to include everybody in terms of sexual orientation and in terms of, I guess, orientation of gender or sex or whatever. You get the point. And he wasn't even allowed to wear that in Saudi Arabia. The WWE sickens me. Well, let me gather my thoughts. Party Complex back in 100.